I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
Hey, how's it going, everybody, and welcome to another Murder Monday with me, Unreal Scopes. And today I got two stories for you. One is going to be a quick little story, and then another one we're going to kind of go into a deeper look at. The first one we're going to get into is a kid by the name of Christopher. He was 16 years old at the time he committed his crime. He was born October 23rd, 1989. He was born in, he committed his crime actually in Rochester, Michigan. I'm from Michigan, if you didn't know that. He stabbed his mother to death. He stabbed her 111 times. He stabbed her in the head, eyes, and throat. And anyone who knows anything about, like, murders, that seems to be quite a lot. Like, that is definitely anger. She was stabbed either on a Sunday night or a Monday morning, and her body was discovered the next day by her mother. Her body was found underneath a tarp in the entrance to the home, like as soon as you walk in, like the hallway of the home. After he killed his mother, he stole her van, and once the body was discovered, obviously they called the police. The police said that they were checking every place they can think of, and they'd like the public's help if they see the guy. They were on the lookout for a 1999 Chevy Astro van with a personalized plate that says, "Love for You." His mother was actually a psychiatrist. She was a part of the church and all this other stuff. It's said that days before the murder, they were getting into fights because he was on, like, lots of, like, really pornographic websites, like, not normal porn, like, fucked up porn. And he was on, like, websites to, like, help him make weapons and things, and I guess he was, like, trying to make pipe bombs and all that. And, she obviously didn't like that. At the scene of the crime, the police found blood droplets at the home and in the sinks, and a blue-handled folding knife with blood and hair on it outside. They also found his, bloody clothes in the laundry. So what happened next is, like, they obviously, located his father and everything, and they got, like, lists of his father's, homes, and he actually owned a, cabin up north. So, the Oakland County Sheriff's Office reached out to the Richfield Township Police Chief about him possibly being in the area at his father's cabin. The police verified that the van was located there, and they were able to surround the cabin without him knowing. And what they did is they sat there for 3 hours waiting for the detective to get them the phone number, his cell phone number. And once they got that number, they called him, and he just didn't answer. So they approached the cabin cautiously with a bullhorn. They made their presence known, and he came out no contest. Like, they were able to subdue him pretty easily. Inside the cabin, he had shaved his head. They found they found military and survival type gear. And he told the police he planned on driving south to go into hiding. Once he got arrested, he pled guilty and everything. His lawyer told him to plead insanity, but he didn't want to do that. Chris's lawyer is quoted saying, "Chris, in his mind, was basically on a mission from God. He believed in a higher authority. His mother was not going to stand in his way. He was attempting to stop the abortionists. He was attempting to stop the pornographers. He wanted to save the children." He was found guilty and sentenced to 25 to 37 years in prison on May 1st of 2006. Since he's been in prison, he's been doing, like, a lot of writing. You can actually find, like, stuff he's published on the internet, and I don't know why that annoys me, but it does. But, I don't know, like, I haven't actually read it, so who knows, it could be, like, thoughtful and insightful, but I don't fucking know. But, I guess, because why the fuck not, I'm gonna read something for you. It's called, "I'm losing my mind after refusing to plead insanity for murdering my mom. Solitary takes its toll." It was as if I had been bleached from the room. My 6x10 cell was white. The walls were white, the floor was white, and the lights were white, but never dimmed. The only object in the room apart from the mattress on the floor was a stainless steel toilet, which reflected the white light. In the courtroom just hours earlier, on May 1st, 2006, I had received a sentence to 25 to 37 years in prison. The judge reminded me I could change my guilty plea by claiming insanity. I refused and was removed from the courtroom. Now I was in the pole, which someone had explained to me was the psychological hole. It was a place for protecting me physically from myself. As I sat there, sometimes reflecting, sometimes just staring at the wall, sometimes napping, I began to wonder whether it got its name because it was where they put people who were crazy, or whether it's because this was the place they put people to make them crazy. Was there even a distinction? Apart from when staff delivered meals, I never knew what time it was. There, to the right, was a message written on a window, 100% Jamaican. It was scrawled in toothpaste and feces. But even if the court had listened to the psychologist, I refused to. Try to imagine being 15 years old and being told that you, your brain, and your conception of reality and everything you knew was wrong. There I was, so crazy I wouldn't plead crazy. When you are alone, truly alone, with no distractions, the only thing you can hear are the whispers of demons, not real voices, but thoughts that infect your mind. Your sense of self, your sense of what is real, what you hear is determined by whether you listen. There's only so much a mind can put up with, particularly when faced with unlimited nothingness. It is really possible to drive someone crazy? In such a short time, no, at least not permanently. I could feel it welling up, though. A hypersensitivity at first. I noticed the most subtle, alternating flickering of the white light. On a scale of 1 to 10, it was the difference between 9.9 and 10. Patterns, faces, and images appeared in the texture of the walls, next to small stains I hadn't noticed before, the origins of which I didn't want to consider. As I lay there, blanket over my head, pinpricks of light shining through the threads, I imagined scenarios in my mind. There was the girl I used to talk to back in school, who I imagined was coming to check in on me and see how I was doing. I imagined meeting the judge again, and this time I could say whatever I wanted to him. Some combination of fuck you and please help me. I imagined myself in the hospital where I went around my 11th birthday after my mother, to whose murder I just pleaded guilty, sucker punched me and threw me headfirst into our living room's glass and wood coffee table. And I saw myself as I was a year earlier, when I had been incarcerated in the highest security building of the juvenile detention facility. It was the best and the freest year of my life, having spent the previous 15 and a half years in a house with someone who kept my bedroom window nailed shut and barred me from going outside. Soon I merely imagined a companion who anesthetized my loneliness. A beautiful girl with a face and a name I could whisper, as if she were actually there. A person to talk to hold me. In my solitude, alone and away from my mother and everyone else who could possibly listen or would possibly care, I muttered thoughts to this girl. I would imagine her responses, sometimes subtly mouthing the words I pretended she'd say. So while I was reading this story, while I was recording, I actually had to, just cut so much silent audio because, the way that ended, I thought there was more to it. But no, the last sentence was literally, and I would imagine her responses, sometimes subtly mouthing the words I pretended she'd say. That was how it ended. That was the end of his writing. But while reading this story, talking about his mother's abuse, I remembered that in the research I did, I forgot to mention this earlier, he, or his lawyer rather, was claiming that there was abuse in the household and this and that, but there was absolutely no signs of that. I just think it was a kid who kind of got, I don't know if he was brought into the wrong crowd or what, but I didn't see any abuse or brain injuries or anything like that, no mutilation of animals, so he doesn't fit the serial killer description. But maybe he got angry, obviously he got angry. He stabbed his mother 111 times. What the fuck am I saying? What am I trying to say, everybody? I don't know, honestly, it doesn't make sense to me. It's insane, who was brainwashing him almost, to want to kill abortionists, people that get abortions, to We kill people in the pornography industry. Like, what the fuck? Everyone watches porn. Fuck out of here if you don't watch porn. The hell? Like, oh, I'm gonna kill everybody with pipe bombs? Like, that's insane. Like, and he wasn't even trying to target his mother. He just ended up killing her because she was trying to stop him. Like, she was upset that he was on these websites. So obviously he has some psychological issue there. So who knows? Maybe this little fuckhead could have played insanity and gotten away with it. I don't fucking know. But he's still in jail today. He'll be up for parole in 2031, I believe. But yeah, that is the story of Christopher, whatever the fuck his last name is. Christopher Dinkovich. And the next person we're going to talk about, you know him. You love him. He's the crazy motherfucker. Everybody knows. Well, he's dead now. But his name is Charles Manson. Now, if you don't know who Charles Manson is, he was an American criminal and cult leader in the mid-1960s. Motherfucker was crazy, but honestly, this dude didn't have a chance. Like, he honestly never had a chance to have a normal fucking life. Like, maybe at one point, maybe, but alright. You know, I think it'd be easier if I just start reading shit. Just get into it. He was born on November 12th of 1934 to a 16-year-old mother. He was first named No Name Maddox. Like, she just didn't know what the fuck she was going to name him. But within weeks, he was called Charles Mills Maddox. So he may have never known who his actual father was. And his mother got arrested on August 1st of 1939 when he was about 5 years old. Her and one of her robber buddies went to go rob a house, and they were found and arrested within hours. Her buddy was sentenced to 10 years in prison, and she was sentenced to 5 years. And Manson was placed in a home with his aunt and uncle. When his mother was paroled in 1942, remember he was 5 at the time, so 3 years later he'd be about 8. He says that this was the happiest time of his life, was when his mother first got home from prison. So fast forward a little ways, his mom gets arrested for grand larceny but not convicted. They move to Indianapolis, and she starts attending some AA meetings where she meets another alcoholic named Lewis, whom she married in August of 1943. So fast forward a little bit more, and Manson started like stealing around his house and like businesses and stuff. And he went and spent the Christmas of 1943 with his aunt and uncle again, where they caught him stealing a gun. And his mother decided that she couldn't actually take care of him right now, so she wanted to send him to a foster home, but she couldn't find a suitable one. So she sent him to the Gilbert School for Boys, which is a school for boys considered to be juvenile delinquents, and was run by Catholic priests. And that's just a no-no. I mean, now we know Catholic priests are, you know, sick fucks. He tried to get out of there twice. Once he ran away and actually made it back to his mom, and she sent him back. And again, he escaped and went to Indianapolis, where he rented a room, and he supported himself by like robbing stores at night. He got caught, and a sympathetic judge sent him to a new place called Boys Town. That's another juvenile delinquent school in Nebraska. After only being there for 4 days, though, he and somebody else stole a vehicle and fled to Illinois. After being caught for more robberies, he was sent to the Indiana Boys School. Yet again, another school for juvenile delinquents. There, he said he was beaten and raped, like, multiple times. And, after 2 failed attempts, he eventually escaped in 1951. After a while, he, got caught for more thefts, and he was apprehended and sent to the National Training School for Boys in Washington, D.C. He was evaluated, and he was deemed to be aggressively antisocial. He was transferred to the Natural Bridge Honor Camp before he could be paroled in a scheduled parole hearing set for 1952. He was caught raping another boy at knife point. So this is when we really see Manson start to get out of control, because he had been going to all these different schools, and he had been getting raped and all that stuff. He kind of started going a little crazy, and it was kind of like that, you're not going to do it to me, I'm going to do it to you mentality, but because he was small, he had to be more aggressive. He was a pretty short guy, and he was very skinny his whole life. But anyways, after that, he was transferred to the Federal Reformatory in Pittsburgh, Virginia, where he was caught committing several homosexual crimes against other boys, and was then transferred to a maximum security facility in Ohio. He was released to his aunt and uncle in 1954 at 20 years old. So while he was living with his aunt and uncle, he actually met a woman, a local waitress named Rosalie Jean Willis, and they got married. He actually started to straighten his life out a bit. He lived a normal life, actually worked. Once they were pregnant, he convinced his wife that they should move out to Los Angeles. So what he did, he stole a car, like good old Manson does, and it got discovered in their possession, and Manson was sentenced to 3 years in San Pedro, California. During his prison stay there, though, his wife actually met another man and was planning to divorce Charles once he learned that he tried to escape, got caught, and then lost his chance at the upcoming parole. So once he was finally released from prison, it gets a little crazy at this point in time. Like, he met this woman, and eventually it was he pimped her out. Like, he convinced her to, sell herself so they could have money and this and that. And, he had the Manson girl, so it was more than one woman eventually that, were just, he was literally just pimping them out. And, that's how he kind of got his, whole little cult going, was, this right here. This is what it started, really. So, after he got arrested again for, trying to, cash a treasury check. That was a federal offense. And, he was at the, Los Angeles County Jail. He was transferred from Los Angeles County Jail to, McNeil Island, Washington. And he took guitar lessons from Barker Karpus gang leader Alvin Creepy Karpus, and obtained from another inmate a contact name of someone at Universal Studios in Hollywood, Phil Kaufman. So once Manson got discharged, he was literally walking around with a guitar, talking about how he's gonna be a famous musician, this and that. And he eventually gets a group of followers, it's just these young women, and they eventually got called the Manson family, but he actually has, music out there. Charles Manson has music out there, because he was I'm gonna be, great. That's gonna be me. All you guys are gonna want to be around me when it finally hits off. So I'm actually gonna play for you a quick snippet of one of his songs. Now, I don't know, if it's copyrighted or not, so I'm not gonna play it for very long. Probably about 10-15 seconds. But this is just a sample of, Manson. Now, I gotta say, if it wasn't for the pimping, the rapes at the boys' school, the robberies, the murders, could have had a decent life, Manson, I think. He doesn't have a bad voice. He didn't have a bad voice. Dude went crazy, straight up. So, around this time, Manson tried to get a record deal with a record producer, Terry Melcher, who was folk music and all that kind of stuff that Manson was into, and he tried to get into a record contract with him, but he just didn't want anything to do with Manson, really. And Manson had some resentment for him after that. So there's a lot I didn't discuss in this episode. After a while, Manson became obsessed with the Beatles and the race war and the whole helter-skelter. He thought the Beatles were trying to tell him something personally, and they were living out in the desert, and there was just a whole bunch of crazy shit on drugs. So at this point, they were all calling themselves the Manson family. It was his family, his called the Manson family, and we're just gonna jump right into the night of the murders, in which he was in jail and actually ended up dying in jail from. On the night of August 8th, 1969, Manson had instructed 4 of his followers to go to, quote, that house where Melcher used to live, to totally destroy everyone in it, as gruesome as you can, end quote. The 4 people to go to the house was Tex Watson, Suzanne Atkins, Linda Kasabian, and Patricia Krenwinkel. When they arrived at the house, Watson had been at the house on at least one other occasion, climbed a telephone pole near the entrance gate and cut the phone line to prevent telephone access to the house. At this point, it was after midnight, August 9th, 1969. The group backed their car to the bottom of the hill that led to the estate, parked, and walked back up to the house. Thinking the gate might be electrified or rigged with an alarm, they climbed a brushy embankment to the right of the gate and entered the grounds. Just as they entered the grounds, headlights approached them from farther within the angled property. Watson ordered the women to lie in the bushes. He stepped out and ordered the approaching driver to halt. An 18-year-old student, Stephen Parent, had been visiting the property's caretaker, who lived in the property's guest house. As Watson leveled a .22 caliber revolver at Parent, the frightened youth begged Watson not to hurt him, claiming he would not see anything. Watson lunged at Parent with a knife, giving him a defensive slash wound on the palm of his hand. He severed tendons and tore the boy's wristwatch off. He then shot him 4 times in the chest and abdomen, killing him. Watson ordered the women to help push the car further up the driveway. So after heading up the front lawn, Watson had Casabian search for an open window to the main house. He then cut the screen of a window, told Casabian to keep a watch down by the gate. She then headed over to Parent's car and waited. Watson removed the screen, entered through a window, and let Atkins and Krenwinkel in through the front door. As Watson whispered to Atkins, a sleeping Frykowski awoke on the living room couch. Watson kicked him in the head. When Frykowski asked him who he was and what he was doing there, Watson replied, "And if you guys know Murder Monday, this is kind of where the intro to this comes from. I'm the devil, and I'm here to do the devil's business." So on Watson's direction, Atkins and Krenwinkel went through the house and found the 3 other occupants and forced them into the living room. At this time, I should say that Sharon Tate was one of the victims, and she was 8 months pregnant at the time of this murder. Watson began to tie up Tate and Sebring together by their necks with rope that he had brought and slung up over one of the living room ceiling beams. Sebring protested twice and of rough treatment over Tate because she was pregnant, and that prompted Watson to shoot him. Folger was taken momentarily back to her bedroom for her purse, out of which she gave the intruders $70. After that, Watson stabbed the groaning Sebring 7 times. Frykowski's hands had been bound with a towel. Freeing himself, Frykowski began struggling with Atkins, who stabbed at his legs with the knife with which she had been guarding him. As he fought his way toward and out the front door onto the porch, Watson caught up with Frykowski and struck him over the head with the gun multiple times, stabbed him repeatedly, shot him twice. Watson broke the gun's right grip in the process. Around this time, Kasabian was drawn up from the driveway by horrifying sounds. She arrived outside the door. In a vain effort to halt the massacre, she falsely told Atkins that someone was coming. Inside the house, Folger had escaped from Krenwinkel and fled out a bedroom door to the pool area. Folger was pursued to the front lawn by Krenwinkel, who caught her, stabbed her, and finally tackled her to the ground. She was killed by Watson, who stabbed her 28 times. As Frykowski struggled across the lawn, Watson murdered him with a final flurry of stabbings. Frykowski was stabbed a total of 51 times. In the house, Tate pleaded to be allowed to live long enough to have her baby, and offered herself as a hostage in an attempt to save the life of her unborn child. At this point, either Atkins or Watson, or both, killed Tate. She was stabbed 16 times. As she was being killed, she just cried out, "Mother, Mother." So per Charles Manson's orders, he told them to leave a sign, something witchy. So using the towel that had bound Frykowski's hands, Atkins wrote "pig" on the house's front door in Tate's blood. En route home, the killers changed out of their bloody clothes, which they disposed of in the hills along with their weapons. So Manson was displeased with how sloppy and panicky everybody was the night before. So he took six people in total, six family members: Leslie Van Houten, Steve Clem Krogan, and the four others from the previous night, out to show him how it's done, quote unquote. After they rode around for hours, he was contemplating several people to murder, and he eventually came upon a house. Manson walked up to the house. He then returned to Watson and pointed out a sleeping man through a window. The two of them entered through the unlocked back door. Manson roused the sleeping Leno from the couch at gunpoint and had Watson bind his hands with a leather thong. After Rosemary, his wife, was brought briefly into the living room from the bedroom, Watson followed Manson's instructions to cover the couple's heads with pillowcases. He bound these in place with lamp cords. Manson left, sending Krenwinkel and Leslie Van Houten into the house with instructions that the couple be. Manson, before he left the house, had told them that they are simply being robbed and they would not be harmed. Watson instructed the two women to take Rosemary to the bedroom from which she came from. He then went to the living room and began stabbing Leno with a chrome-plated bayonet. The first thrust went into Leno's throat. Sounds of a scuffle in the bedroom drew Watson there to discover that Rosemary was keeping the woman at bay by swinging the lamp tied to her neck. After subduing her with several stabs of the bayonet, he returned to the living room and resumed attacking Leno, whom he stabbed a total of 12 times with the bayonet. When he had finished, Watson carved "War" on the man's exposed abdomen. Returning to the bedroom, Watson found Krenwinkel stabbing Rosemary with a knife from the kitchen. Heeding Manson's instructions to make sure each of the women played a part, Watson told Van Houten to stab Rosemary too. She did, stabbing her approximately 16 times in the back and the exposed butt. At trial, Van Houten would claim uncertainly that Rosemary was dead when she stabbed her. Evidence showed that many of Rosemary's 41 stab wounds had, in fact, been inflicted post-mortem. While Watson cleaned off the bayonet and showered, Krenwinkel wrote "Rise" and "Death to Pigs" on the walls, and "Helter Skelter." She didn't even write Helter Skelter correctly. She wrote "Helter Skelter" on the refrigerator door, all in the LaBianca's blood. She gave Leno 14 puncture wounds with an ivory-handled, two-tinned carving fork, which she left jutting out of his stomach. She also planted a steak knife in his throat. Manson, Watson, Krenwinkel, Van Houten were found guilty of these murders. Van Houten was not charged in connection to the Tate murders, but the remaining defendants, along with Susan Atkins, were found guilty of the Tate murders. Each received a death sentence, but this was commuted to life in prison for each person when the state of California temporarily abolished the death penalty. Manson was admitted to state prison from Los Angeles County on April 22, 1971, for 7 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder. So, while he was in prison in 1974, Manson had stated his religion was Scientology and identified as a Scientologist. Manson completed 150 hours of auditing before declaring Scientology too crazy, which, if Manson is telling you your religion's crazy, then it's fucking insane. April 11th, 2012 was Manson's last parole hearing. Manson was denied release at his 12th parole hearing, which he did not attend. After his March 27th, 1997 parole hearing, Manson refused to attend any of his later hearings. The panel at that hearing noted that Manson had a, quote, history of controlling behavior and mental health issues, including schizophrenia and paranoid delusional disorder, and was too great a danger to be released. The panel also noted that Manson had received 108 rules violation reports, had no indication of remorse, no insight into the causative factors of the crimes, lacked understanding of the magnitude of the crimes, had an exceptional, callous disregard for human suffering, and had no parole plans. At the April 11, 2012 parole hearing, it was determined that Manson would not be reconsidered for parole for another 15 years, not before 2027, at which time he would have been 92 years old. On January 1st, 2017, Manson was suffering from intestinal bleeding at California State Prison when he was rushed to Mercy Hospital in downtown Bakersfield. The source said that Manson was seriously ill, and his doctors considered him too weak for surgery. He was returned to prison by January 6th. Whatever treatment he had received was not disclosed. On November 15th, 2017, a source not authorized to speak on behalf of the Corrections Department confirmed that Manson had returned to the hospital. He later died from cardiac arrest resulting from respiratory failure and colon cancer at the hospital 4 days later on November 19th. He was 83 years old. His body was eventually claimed by his grandson, Jason Freeman, and Jason Freeman had Manson cremated on March 20th of 2018. So I'm going to play a few quick interview clips from him real quick. This first one is he was asked about what he thinks about Ted Bundy.
Bundy's a rumpkin. Bundy's a poop butt. Bundy's his mama's boy. Bundy's out there trying to prove something to his own manhood. That's got nothing to do with me. I don't roll around with poop people like that. I stand with people that can stand with themselves.
What do you think about what he said about pornography?
Pornography? I've been looking at it all my life. It hasn't affected me anything. Who do you think I am, girl? If you could pick all the words of the vocabulary that your mother told you, who do you think I am? But this is only a couple hours. Can you imagine what it would be like a couple days with me? I live 100 years a day.
As a matter of fact, Manson apparently didn't think that 2.5 hours was enough. He wrote me a postcard saying that he wished we'd had more time for him to say what was on his mind, more time to explain himself. He said he was sorry that I didn't believe a lot of the things that he told me. He ended it by saying, maybe when you see the world die, you will see how real I try to be.
Ted Bundy is a poop butt, he says.
What do you think it is about you that makes people want to be a part of whatever it is you're a part of?
I'm brand new. Everything I do is always brand new. I'm on the premise of reality. I walk a real road. I'm a real person inside. I'm not a phony. I don't put on no airs. I say what I think. You see what I'm saying?
Aren't you putting on an air now? Aren't you putting on an air for me?
When you look it back, see if it's an air. See if where you get it. Someone sees it and goes by and they say, hey, how you doing? I say, pretty good. How you be?
Pretty good. How you be? Alright, now this last one, if you haven't seen it, I really suggest you look it up. It's called Charles Manson, Crazy or Genius. Now, after he's asked his question, he's like standing there, like he's making like all these crazy facial expressions before he answers, and I really suggest you just look it up.
People look at you today, 20 years later, and they still have no idea what you're about. Tell me in a sentence who you are.
Nobody. I'm nobody. I'm a tramp, a bum, a hobo. I'm a boxcar and a jug of wine. And a straight razor if you get too close to me.
Alright guys, well that was Charles Manson, and I really hope you enjoyed this. I'm gonna play another little segment for one of his songs, and I will see you guys in the live video.
Invisible tears in my eyes, incredible pain in my heart, indestructible